couple 100 feet away from Fullerton Airport, which I can tell you is a notoriously difficult airport to land at for general aviators, and we're still trying to get a handle on this, but we just kind of did some recon around the scene, and I think the airplane may have just gone straight down into this building. You see this huge gap in the roof of this manufacturing building. So I'm just going to widen out and show you where you're kind of in that big industrial park that is just to the east of the Fullerton Airport runways. So it's a very, very large building here. But as I look all over the place, I haven't seen any pieces of the plane, and it is kind of making me think that the plane may have lost control and just nosedived into this building. I don't see any wreckage that I can make out. Actually, maybe as I double in right there, see if I can put the magnifying glass up on this. Yeah. Maybe, yeah, that might look like a piece of the plane, but I haven't seen any other indications of that airplane right now, but just catastrophic for sure. We have not heard any confirmation of injuries or fatalities or how many people may have been involved in that airplane. It just looks like I can see a stretcher coming out right now. I mean, you have to wonder if anyone was injured inside. As let's check this out right here. This looks like to be some people. Just gonna put the digital zoom on here. If these are maybe employees of whatever that business is. We know that there are evacuations inside of that building right now. That is all we know. Just still kind of very vague details. Obviously, this just happened moments ago, but we're starting to see now Orange County Fire bringing out some stretchers right here. So hopefully just precautionary, but a couple of people out here with their shirts off. Wonder if they, if they had any smoke inhalation or burns or anything like that. So still working to confirm some details on the extent of injuries and damage and how all of this happened. But this is a very unique one here, Amy. It's not very often that we see what appears to be potentially a plane just nosedive into the roof of a building, especially so close to the airport.
Absolutely, and you would hope that it would have been able to maybe land on there. But Desmond, you were already up getting ready for our newscast. I mean, I was outside just a moment ago. It was a beautiful day here in Studio City, but what are the conditions there? Do you think, I mean, it doesn't appear that it's foggy. It doesn't appear that it's windy. So kind of ideal flying conditions?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not even really windy. It's a little bit breezy in the San Fernando Valley, but on the LA Basin down through Orange County, we're not feeling any wind up here in SkyCal conditions. Sky conditions are nice. The air is it's not the cleanest air, but the visibility is just fine. I mean, I can see out to Mount Baldy from here. No issues at all as far as weather or the visibility, anything like that. This was most likely a mechanical issue or something. If something happened with the pilot, it could have been a medical emergency or pilot error. There are so many things that it could have been. It's obviously, just going to be way too early to speculate on that. But, usually when we see a plane crash into a building, there's some kind of attempt to land that plane. I mean, we've actually seen planes land and people survive on top of buildings like this before. Maybe, maybe the plane is wrecked, but people are going to survive. This appears that the plane just entered directly perpendicular, just nosedived into this building is what it appears anyway. Like I said, we haven't seen any wreckage anywhere else. I'll just widen out. I want to show you exactly how far we are away from the airport right now.
That's what I was just getting ready to ask you, how far away?
Yep. I'm gonna put up our measuring tool as well. So there, right there is the runway there just to the left. And we can actually measure this. Let me see if I'm able to kind of do this. Only, about 1,200 feet away from touching down on the runway. So very close. But, while I have that view of Fullerton Airport, it might be kind of hard to appreciate on this shot right here. But this is a pretty tricky place to land. And the runway is not very long. You have to come in and just be very, very perfect with the way that you approach that airstrip. I've known dozens of pilots over the years who have told me that there have been issues at this airport before, and we have covered several crashes here. In fact, there was one that may have been right out, not far away from this building, maybe 3 or 4 months ago, if I remember, that we covered. I believe those people survived that crash. That was, if memory serves, not nearly as catastrophic as what we're looking at now. Unfortunately, I mean, if the plane just nosedived into that building, it's very hard for me to imagine that, anything that anyone survived that. So hopefully we'll be able to get some more information here from the fire department. Obviously, right now they're very busy just trying to knock this fire down, and who knows what is going on inside of that building. But you see they're venting the fire here, so they're having to do some additional venting. You're seeing some smoke coming out here. We're not seeing really thick black billowing smoke. It's mostly white or gray. That is definitely trending in the right direction. But so it's not just this plane crash, but the aftermath and people inside of this building may be injured as well.
Yeah. Hey, Desmond, it's Juan Fernandez joining Amy Johnson here. When you're showing us those rafters there and the cross beams there in the ceiling, it's incredible. Like, where did the plane go? And exactly, did it thread that needle there? Did the wings fall off? How big a plane was it?
Okay.
So many questions out there. And as we see the firefighters trying to vent the ceiling there, trying to get more airflow in there. I had a question for you. The follow-up on that, Desmond, is you mentioned about how tricky this, that's right, look at the water coming out of the hole there. Is there trying to put maybe a fire out, maybe douse the engine if it's caught fire. What makes that airport so tricky to land into, Desmond? You said some of your pilot friends say that one is a little iffy.
Yeah, it's a shorter runway. It's considerably shorter. I mean, much shorter than Van Nuys Airport or even Hawthorne Airport. Like, it's not even long enough that you could take a jet off on very safely at this. I don't think you're ever going to see jets landing at Fullerton Airport. So there's that. There's also a radio transmission antenna not far away from from where you would take off, just to the north. The KFI transmission antenna that has been very vexing to pilots, I know, in the past as well. I think you could get some crosswinds, which can make it kind of tricky. And so, if you have crosswinds with a short runway, it's just it's very difficult. You feel every little bump in a Cessna. I can tell you that. Cessnas, Bedanzas, the smaller general aviation aircraft that come into this airport. I've landed back when I was in traffic watch. We've landed at this airport a couple of times. So it definitely can be dicey. Now, we did just hear, my pilot Chris was able to confirm with the tower that this plane was coming in for a landing. They don't have a tail number on this yet, so and it's not clear if it was coming in because if they were reporting an emergency, or if they were just coming in to make a routine landing and something catastrophic happened. We aren't hearing anything about that yet, but we do know now from the tower that the plane was coming in for a landing, as we're going to zoom out and see if we can see anyone being loaded up on these stretchers right now.
That's what I was going to say, Desmond. We're seeing another stretcher being pulled out. They're setting up some sort of triage area there. Are we seeing anybody being pulled out, whether it's somebody on board that plane? There's a guy there without a shirt on.
Yeah.
You see that guy right there?
Looks like ice pack to his head there in the black sweatshirt.
And he has something on his, maybe it's when you get triaged, you get maybe an ID or something put on you. You see that white piece of paper in front of him. Yeah, right there, Desmond. Or maybe if it was somebody inside that warehouse, maybe who was hit.
Yeah, that's what we were thinking. Perhaps there was folks that have been injured when that plane came crashing down. And I can't even imagine the shock and disbelief when that plane came through the roof of where you're just working.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that would have been just incredibly terrifying, I'm sure, because you have what could have basically just been like a massive, almost like a bullet or a cannonball type object just fall through the roof, probably. If it went straight through the roof like that, I mean, I'm thinking it had a pretty high velocity, that it was probably going pretty fast to go in. And then, the fuel is kept in the wings of a smaller plane. So you have that kind of impact, and if you have, sparks or anything like that, it could turn into a fireball very quickly. By the time it is, inside of that warehouse, you're talking about not just the shock of this sudden crash and the sound and shrapnel and things flying, but then things potentially igniting, and there could, be fire everywhere. So I just can't even imagine what that must have been like for the people working inside of whatever that business is, coming, right back from the New Year's holiday, and then bam, just a horribly shocking thing. So we haven't heard about any serious injuries, and you've seen these stretchers have been out here for a while. There are a couple of people here, but hopefully whatever they've suffered, maybe just very minor, maybe hit by some debris, potentially some minor burns or some smoke inhalation or what. But at least from what we're seeing of this scene right now, I mean, we don't know what else is going on in that building, but the folks that are out here, they look like they're at least going to survive.
Yeah, we see those guys that are standing up, Desmond, talking to firefighters, and that one gentleman there who's sitting on the curb with the darker T-shirt, the black T-shirt. He's also being, I guess, evaluated by that firefighter who you see there on his knees. And they are bringing in that stretcher, Amy, so maybe they are going to be taking someone with more serious injuries just to get checked out.
Yeah, absolutely. But it is, I mean, certainly a good sign that these people are up and moving.
Yeah.
Looks like they're all talking. Everyone's conscious. We hope that there was no one left inside that building at this point. And again, we don't know about the pilot or if anybody else was in that plane with the pilot when it went down. But certainly, you know, seeing a relatively small hole in that roof makes you certainly concerned about how small it was when it went into that building.
And again, look at as Desmond goes back to the hole where this plane went through, you still see those crossbeam, the rafters, right, where the ceiling material kind of sits on, and they're there, right? They haven't broken apart, so the plane had to have gone right through either side of those crossbeams there. And again, where is the plane? Who was on the plane? A lot of unanswered questions here at this warehouse in Fullerton, just trying to piece this together. The good news is we're seeing more of that white smoke, right? We're not seeing a lot of billowing smoke. The firefighters just kind of monitoring the situation. So hopefully the person on board is not hurt or wasn't hurt, but we don't know.
We can only hope. And we only saw that one piece. Desmond was able to zoom in and show folks that one piece of what appears to be the plane, but that is really the only evidence that there really was a plane that went inside there. Otherwise, you'd have no idea what caused this perfectly square hole in this roof right here in this warehouse.
And again, those cross beams, right, the rafters, I just keep thinking, wow, like at what velocity did they hit? That didn't stop the plane from going through the roof. How quickly was it traveling? And it somehow made its way into this warehouse here as firefighters keep dousing that area with water. We're seeing water shooting out from that hole right there as possibly warehouse workers are being checked out, triaged, maybe sent to the hospital. Desmond, this is right next to some railroad tracks, so this must be some sort of maybe distribution center of some sort, I'm guessing?
Most likely, yeah. There's definitely a lot of heavy industry right here around Fullerton Airport, and you've got the big sets of train tracks, like you said, where they could potentially just load things right up. I see lots of pallets and boxes and things down here. So I know our assignment desk is working to try to figure out what this exact business is, what they manufacture here. But we've seen some really catastrophic fires when you have something ignite in a building this big, and who knows how high whatever is stacked up inside there. If this is some kind of distribution center, I mean, yeah, you do have all of these big trailers out here as well. That's just a trucking. Yeah, they don't have that's not the name of the business right there, I don't believe. But yeah, very large facility here, very typical of what you see in this business park, kind of industrial park. As I widen out and show you, not at all unusual to see these types of businesses clustered around general aviation airports. Van Nuys Airport very much the same way, Hawthorne Airport as well. And it's just, they were so close, only about 1,500 feet. I mean, really just seconds to go. But the fact that something, I mean, obviously went horribly wrong because they weren't even in a position to, set the plane down with the landing gear upright. It looks like. I mean, you would have thought that they would have, if something was happening, it was just an engine failure, that we would see more of the plane, I would think, outside of the building. It really just looks like it went down prop first, straight down into that building, which is indicative of a very catastrophic failure. Could be an elevator cable. I know I've heard pilots talk about things like that, or if they just got into a stall situation where they lost the lift and just the plane just went straight down. We just don't know. Or a medical emergency. I know that there's been some horrible crashes because the pilot had something go wrong with them. So it's just obviously very preliminary. I'm sure we'll be wanting to listen back to the air traffic control. All of that is recorded and available on the internet, so there will definitely be some looking into that to see were they calling for a mayday? Was he saying that he was having a problem, or did he just call and say he's coming in, and then all of a sudden, the plane is straight down into the building? So those will all be questions, things to be reviewed within the next couple of hours, and see as well the extent of injuries and what all is going on inside of that building right now.
Yeah, I know our Mike Rogers, once he gets in, he'll be checking that air traffic control audio and bringing it to us here on KCAL News. Desmond, you mentioned an elevator cable. What does that mean?
Well, so even though I fly in a helicopter, I used to fly in Cessnas for a long time. I don't have a pilot's license or anything. I try to see if I can just kind of explain this, but my understanding, it's a very important cable. I can tell you that, and it controls the rear flaps, and just like when you're pulling on the yoke to steer it, it's an incredibly important component. And I remember a couple of my pilots back when I used to fly in a Cessna, they were just talking about let's hope we never have an elevator cable failure, because if that does, we're toast. And it was just, so it was, something that we would always talk about, and it's something that, those planes that we flew in were very well maintained, and that's something that is, checked out very much. But, and again, it's all just conjecture at this point, but there is a tendency, I know this for a fact, when we're talking about general aviation that is not done in a professional manner like I was doing when it's someone's hobby or something like that, things can get skipped on maintenance, and that's not to say that necessarily that was what happened, but aircraft obviously are incredibly complicated things. I mean, Cessna's much simpler than SkyCal than a helicopter for sure, but there's a lot of things that can go wrong, and things that can get skipped over on maintenance intervals, and if any one of those things fails, that something like this can happen. So it's definitely a possibility, but it could also, inexperienced pilots can also stall an airplane and then just a nosedive like this as well. So it's way too early to say, but those are definitely the things that we'll be looking into if it was pilot error or some kind of serious mechanical error.
And we haven't seen any of those ambulances leave yet with any of the patients, which I hope is a good sign that those folks are all doing okay. Hopefully very minor injuries, but we see all the ambulances still there, a lot of folks milling about, and oftentimes when it is, very serious, people are being rushed into those ambulances and rushed to the hospital. But we see another stretcher that doesn't have a patient on it yet. We've been watching as a lot of these folks have been milling about, talking with those firefighters, but well, there's someone getting on the stretcher. One guy's getting on there, and we were able to see him get on the stretcher on his own, so that's certainly a good sign, but certainly needs to be checked out, and we see some others still there talking to those firefighters.
Yep, and our Michelle Geely is on the way to the scene there. As soon as she can establish a live signal, we'll get to her with the very latest from the ground there. We have our Desmond Shaw up in SkyCal, monitoring this breaking news story of a plane crash near the Fullerton Airport. For what we see right now, it looks like this plane had some sort of mechanical issue and couldn't even land. It looks like they nosedived right into this warehouse here in Fullerton, just a few hundred feet from the runway there of Fullerton Airport. It looks like, Amy, most of the smoke is now gone. They're still putting water on the situation there, but as far as we can see, the smoke is done. And
we still see a lot of water. And you know what I think is very interesting, and Desmond and I were talking about a little earlier, alluding to the fact that there really is no other sign. You don't see a mark from the plane or anything near that hole. It's just that hole, which is really a perfect square where that plane went right through that hole. We don't see markings along it. It doesn't look as though it skidded. It almost looks as though it just dropped from the sky right in this spot.
And not recently we had that one Cessna that landed not far from the railroad tracks where it landed, and it crashed into a tree. And at least, like Desmond said, it was able to at least make a landing using landing gear. And yes, it crashed and there were some injuries. In this case, it just looks like it just fell out of the sky, dropped out of the sky.
Exactly.
And hit that warehouse. And hopefully the warehouse wasn't too busy. Desmond was showing us all those cardboard boxes just to the outside of the building. This could have been a lot worse, right? If the plane hit a stack of cardboard boxes or pallets, this entire building could have just been a major raging inferno for firefighters to deal with there. But what are we looking at?
And he was showing us a wider shot where you could see that edge of the runway, and he took the measurement earlier. It's 1,200 feet away that this plane went down, 1,200 feet from that runway there. And so they were so close. Desmond's trying to get us a better look inside this hole that's been made by this plane. But it really is a very unusual sight. I mean, we have seen many small plane crashes, but I don't recall one that had no visible signs except for the hole right there.
Yeah, you would normally see maybe if it tried to make a landing and just didn't make the runway, you'd see skid marks on the ceiling of this or the roof of this building, but there's none of it, just the hole. And like you were saying, Amy, look, almost a perfect square left there of that hole, and no signs of an airplane.
That's okay. Okay.
Desmond, are you seeing any sign of the plane in there?
Does that look like the fire suppression system there, Desmond?
Possibly, yeah. Or if those are just some
Sprinklers?
pipes that, yeah, I think it is. I think you're right. I think it is. I mean, we're trying to just get a look vertically straight down if we can. It's pretty dark and there's smoke, but now we're really getting a look here vertically.
It's hard to see.
And I mean, I'm still not really seeing any signs of the plane. So it's all just so weird to me. We're kind of just moving around here to make sure I didn't, miss anything. Like, could the plane have landed on the other side and then just? No, I don't think so. As I widen out, I was thinking, like, could it maybe have like gone in right? I've seen where planes have like gone inside of an opening right here after running, after losing altitude but going more horizontal. But just the way everything is looking here, it was like this was just complete vertical prop first into the top of this building. But and if that's the case and just ripped right through it the way it did, then there may not be very much left of this, and it would be miraculous if anyone survived that. But going nose first like that is pretty much the worst thing that can happen when it comes to obviously aircraft making contact with any surface. I remember we covered it was a couple of years ago in Costa Mesa, not far away from John Wayne Airport. That was a jet that went straight down, and I think something like. I think it's 5 or 6 people that were on that jet that died, and I think if I recall, that may have actually been a medical emergency with the pilot. So, those will be things that we'll be looking into if a medical emergency or catastrophic failure of some type of component or pilot error. But we're still going to be working to get the tail number as well. That's something that we should be able to hear on the air traffic control, and we'll be able to confirm what type of aircraft this was, if it was a Cessna or a Bonanza, something along those lines. Those are typically what we see people flying out of Fullerton Airport with, some of the much smaller range of aircraft.
And Desmond, are these people mostly hobby pilots, people who enjoy flying, or these businesses? Do we know the ones that fly these smaller Cessnas?
Yeah, typically, I mean, there's definitely a lot of retired folks that really enjoy aviation that'll have a hangar or they'll have a tie down spot. I mean, here we can widen out and take a look as my pilot Chris is maneuvering us around, and you can see the types of aircraft that are parked here. Lots of Cessnas. Those are the ones with the high wings. You have some Bonanzas as well down there. So, a couple of, might be a turboprop right there, but typically, planes that are not going to fit more than 2, 3, 4 people. Maybe you have a couple of larger ones that can fit 4 or 5 or 6 people, but not really anything larger than that. Then you have some helicopters as well. This is where CHP keeps their helicopter. So you have some rotorcraft down here as well. A couple of larger ones, some looks like Orange County Fire helicopters. So, but and again, it's hard to appreciate, but this is a pretty short runway. As I widen out here and show you, and that's, like I said, has definitely been a problem for inexperienced pilots in the past, but that does not look like that was what caused today. It wasn't. These were definitely external factors. I don't think it had anything to do with this potentially being a sometimes tricky place to land. This was something much worse, much more catastrophic, sadly.
Yeah. And the only information we're getting right now, Desmond, from Fullerton PD is that the call came in at 2:09 p.m., so exactly an hour from right now is when the call came in, and this is the 2300 block of Raymer Other than that, it's still a very fluid situation. We see one of the ambulances leaving the scene right there. So we are trying to get a little bit more information. And when you showed us, Desmond, those smaller planes on the runway, I can see now how one of those smaller planes could have just, nosedived into that roof there and made its way into the building, because they're not much bigger than maybe a large car, right, with wings. The wings could have snapped off, and the main part of the plane just go right through the building.
Yeah, and they're very light as well. I mean, that's how they're able to fly, and they fly pretty easily. I remember when I used to fly in a Cessna that they are famously very easy as far as to keep them upright. Like I remember some of my pilots have been saying that they practically fly themselves. You just have to do the very basic things correctly, and as long as you don't stall the plane or do any of the things that as an aviator you know not to do, just like when you're driving a car, not to drive on the wrong side of the road or go 130 miles an hour and try to yank. As long as you're not doing any of those fundamentally incorrect things, they are pretty reliable. I mean, and if you have an engine failure, I mean, like you said, we've seen plenty of planes we've seen them make landings on the freeway. I remember covering a Cessna that landed on the 55 freeway. Everyone was fine. The plane was completely fine. We've seen them land on the 91, land on the 101 freeway, and so that's what just makes me think that this was obviously something really, really wrong. If it was something like an elevator cable, like I said, or if it was a medical emergency, if the pilot had a heart attack or something happened and they panicked and got into a stall. Sadly, I covered that at Van Nuys Airport years ago, where someone panicked and they turned the plane too sharply at too steep of an angle, and they stalled the plane and went right into a business park, and they lost their life. So these kinds of things do happen. I've really seen all the run-of-the-mill of as far as the general aviation disasters, and a lot of times it is either an engine failure and they land safely, or pilot error, or something really, really bad, and you have a result like this. So again, still very preliminary, but unfortunately just all too common of an occurrence when it comes to these smaller airports and these smaller airplanes and general aviation.
Yeah, certainly we're seeing that smoke has really slowed down. We're seeing a lot less of that, but we are seeing, we were noticing that the fire department was pulling out another stretcher. It looked like they were going to be taking someone else away from the scene, which you always hate to see that people are injured from something like this. Still no word on that pilot, if the pilot was alone or if anyone else was on board that plane. But we do see a number of people still sitting out there on the curb, discussing things with firefighters, waiting perhaps to be loaded up into an ambulance to get further checked out. But, again, we've been mentioning that the injuries do not seem too serious with these people, and we're guessing that these people were all working in that building and not on board that plane. But it would certainly be wonderful to see that pilot and perhaps anyone else there without serious injuries. But at this point, it's just too early to say what kind of injuries they may have endured.
And it seems like the focus, Amy, is on those people there on the curb being looked at, being triaged. Maybe they're just being taken to the hospital as a precaution. Smoke inhalation, Desmond was mentioning that could be a problem. Just the fact that they were maybe so close to this plane coming down, they just want to be, maybe their managers, their bosses want them to get looked at just to make sure that they are okay so they can come back to work tomorrow. But again, this is where the focus seems to be. You see fire out there, you see police officers. So, I mean, was the pilot pulled out? Are they waiting for other detectives to show up to look inside the warehouse? Do they have to get the fire out first? There's a lot of things going on there that we still can't see. Just even Desmond with his extended lens on the SkyCal there, we couldn't see inside the building there. But most of the focus right now is on that curb there. And as I mentioned, Michelle Geely should be on the ground shortly to bring us a live report from there, talking to her sources in Orange County to see exactly what happened here. But as you said, Amy, look, a lot of that smoke is dissipating, but They're still putting water on it just as a precaution.
What we are hearing as well, Juan,
Yes.
that I'm hearing is that there are some reports of injuries. We are hearing that perhaps as many as 11 people that are being checked out that may have been injured in this, but we don't have any specifics. That's according to the Associated Press, that there are 11 people that have been injured. So we hope that these are the people that we are seeing, that their injuries are not too serious, that they've been up, we've seen them walking, we've seen them talking, and they all appear to be conscious and breathing, which is a good thing, but we still have not received word about the pilot or anyone else on board that plane.
And injuries are going to vary, right, Amy? There's going to be people who are far away from the plane. When it came through that building, they're okay. We're looking possibly at the more serious injured people there getting put on stretchers and being taken to the hospital. I didn't see 11 people sitting on the curb there being treated. So that's the word we're getting from AP, 11 people injured right now.
Yeah, as we look here, we can still see 3 there, maybe 4. We did see more a little earlier. We've seen at least 1 person be taken in the ambulance away from the scene. So, you know, again, when you hear 11, it could just be people who have very minor injuries that at least need to be checked out by those firefighters. Perhaps they won't be taken to the hospital, but they do need to be looked at and make sure that they are okay. As you can imagine, Juan, there's probably so much debris flying, a lot of smoke, as you've mentioned. Perhaps it was smoke inhalation. Also, you've got fuel from that plane that would come down, and you know, depending on how close these people were to that actual plane that came crashing into the building, you know, those injuries could certainly vary. But we have not seen many of those ambulances leave. I believe we've only seen one. Des, you've got a better view, but I've only seen from this vantage point 1 ambulance that has left with anyone in it.
Yeah, sorry. So Amy and Juan, I was just talking with my pilot Chris here, and he was telling me how the controller that was on the clock when this happened, they're now being interviewed by the FAA already. So they're you know, moving at a very rapid pace with this. So the person who's in the tower right now is a backup controller, so they don't have really any information about what exactly was happening when this all went down. If they were doing touch and goes, or if they were just coming in for a landing. Touch and goes are a very common tactic that pilots will do to build up training for landing. You come in, you do everything to land, but instead of, you know, getting off the runway, you push the throttle back in again, and then you just take right back off, and you go into the pattern and circle, and then you come down and you touch down again and touch it. So that's what a touch and go is. So if they were doing that, or if they were just coming in full stop landing, they would call it you know, where they're going to be done and go to their parking spot, or what, you know, the deal is. Where was this plane based here? Did it come from one of the other smaller airports in Southern California, or from somewhere else? We'll need, you know, the tail number to get that. Once we get the tail number, we'll be able to see where this plane was flying around, and, you know, maybe be able to determine, and then we'll get the air traffic control information as well, and we'll see if there were any mayday calls or them saying anything about having a rough engine or anything like that. So all things that will be definitely learned in the near future. But the fire, like you said, at least looks to be pretty much completely knocked down at this point. So you know, and you know, that's another factor. How much gas was in the wings of this plane? Was it running really low on fuel? Did they have a full supply of fuel on board? You know, 100 or 200 gallons or so in a small Cessna, and it could definitely turn into a fireball very easily. So yeah, just very tragic. I mean, we need to learn what happened to the pilot, but it obviously does not look good in any way. All these people out here probably just insanely shaken up. But if there's any good news, I haven't seen anyone be put on a stretcher now at this point. You know, they're just really kind of, hopefully this is just all precautionary, and everyone here is, you know, not going to have any any physical scars, but definitely some mental scars, no doubt about that.
No doubt, and the mystery continues what's happening here in Fullerton.
That's right, and of course we are going to stay on top of this story. Our Michelle Geely, as you mentioned, Juan is on her way, and we are of course going to have much more coming up on KCAL News at 4 o'clock.